Hi, folks. Steve Urban here. Today's episode of the Riderflex podcast is sponsored by Marketing 360. My good friend JB Kellogg and his team do such a fantastic job for us and so many other companies. Marketing 360 is the number one platform for small business, and it's everything you need to grow your business. If you need marketing support, I really encourage you to contact them at marketing360.com/Riderflex, and we'll add that link to the description of this episode for easy reference. And on today's episode of the Riderflex podcast, we have guest Doug Campbell. He was formerly trained as an engineer and self-taught as a scrappy, aggressive, and laser-focused entrepreneur. He's the co-founder of Rocore, an aerospace products company, and the co-founder and CEO of Solid Power, which makes safe, energy-dense, all-solid-state batteries. Doug Campbell on the Riderflex podcast. How you doing, Doug?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
We're living in a crazy world right now, aren't we?
Yeah, these are some bizarre and unprecedented times.
I can tell you're working from home for the last week because you got the half beard going on, the ball cap, right?
So partially correct. So yeah, I have been working from home. Although we've been managing to have a sort of a skeleton crew here at the office, sort of rotating in and out. So I'm actually calling you from the office.
Okay. I know a lot of people working from home on the planet.
Yeah. No, this is my only day in the office this week.
For the listeners, we're recording this on April 2nd, 2020. So if you're listening to this a couple of years from now, we're right in the middle of the coronavirus where half the planet or almost the entire planet's on lockdown. So a lot of people trying to use Zoom today. Right. Zoom's usage this last 2 weeks is up 1,000%, right? Probably.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so crazy. But I appreciate you jumping on the Riderflex podcast. You have a really cool story, obviously. We're always interested in talking to entrepreneurs and what you've done at Rocore and Solid Power and what you've done in your career is very interesting. So appreciate you being on. But before we get into the business stuff, tell the listeners about you just a little bit, some personal stuff, family stuff, where you grew up, things like that.
Yeah. So born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So lived there really up until late 20s. So got both of my degrees from University of New Mexico. So big UNM Lobo basketball fan. Go Lobos.
Okay.
The team that always gets just good enough and gets your hopes up and then, brings them crashing back down. So glutton for punishment. And then relocated to Colorado in 2002. And that was my first sort of post university job right here in the Colorado Front Range.
And are your folks still in Albuquerque or any family back there?
I do have, between myself and my wife, I do have a little bit of family back there in I'll just say the whole state of New Mexico.
Is that right?
Yeah, definitely elements of New Mexico I miss.
Okay. Any brothers, sisters?
I do. Yeah. I've got a brother in California. I've got a sister here also in Colorado, down in Denver, another one in Kansas, and another one in New York City.
Whoa. What is that? Is that 5 total?
5 of us total. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So where are you in the mix there? Just curious.
Second oldest.
All right. And where'd the entrepreneurial bug come from? Was your mom or dad? Did they, anybody in the family? I'm just wondering where that bug came from. Go ahead.
I don't know. There is not an entrepreneur anywhere in my family.
You're the only one. Nobody else, none of the siblings, nobody else owns a business, started a business?
Nope.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. What'd your folks do, by the way?
Engineers and scientists.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got my degrees in civil engineering from University of New Mexico. My mom got her degree in civil engineering also from the University of New Mexico. But unlike my mom, I never worked as a civil engineer. I sort of got to the end of my studies and decided, I don't think I want to be a civil engineer.
Is that why? What changed your mind? What happened?
I jokingly like to say that I got to the end of my undergraduate, and I had an advisor that I just had an immense amount of respect for. And I jokingly say he approached me and basically said, "Doug, I don't think you're civil engineering material." Um, that's sort of the short story. But the long part of the story was, he recognized that I was a pretty aspirational guy.
Okay.
Literally, the way he told me is, he's like, I just don't see you, as a career of just, living out of code books and designing things to some sort of code. And I basically looked at him and I said, yeah, you're right. So his advice was, go to grad school and you'll figure it out.
And all right, when you started grad school, did you think, I want to run a business someday? I want to start a business. When did that start to pop into your head?
I mean, that was a decade later now. So
Really?
when I went into grad school, again, I still stayed within civil engineering department, but I actually started really working in the aerospace industry. So I worked for an advisor who was a part-time researcher at the Air Force Research Laboratory, Space Vehicles Directorate, which was just down the street from the university on Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque.
Okay.
So I pretty much did all of my research there. I only went to the university for classes, pretty much lived on base, and got to the end of that. And that's essentially when I started off into the aerospace world. But it really wasn't until a decade later when I got into the entrepreneurial world.
And talk to us about it. How did it start? How'd you ease into it? Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so basically there's roughly about 10 years where I, quote unquote, had a real job or worked for someone else. In that 10 years, I essentially worked for two other small businesses. Started off as an engineer, but realized I actually wasn't a very good engineer. I wasn't very patient enough. I was what I like to refer to as a close enough engineer, which, like brain surgery and aerospace engineers, you don't want close enough.
Oh.
You want the 100% guy.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I over time, I ended up being more on business development. So let's go out and get money. And I would say that's really where the entrepreneurial bug for me started, which was, I realized I like to explore different things, different markets, different products. And then quickly realized that to do that, you need money. You need to convince someone that your idea is worthy of pursuit. And so, I was lucky enough within those small businesses, I had a fairly long leash that I could go off and, pursue different customers and markets. As long as I brought money back, that was all well and good.
Now you had no experience. You had no experience doing any of that, right? What did they just tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, man, go take some"?
Yeah, I got some exposure to it. And then I think kind of realized like, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this. It wasn't like one day, like, hey, go raise a bunch of money. It was a gradual transition.
Okay.
But I would say within about, by the time I was, I don't know, 6-7 years into my career, that's essentially what I was doing.
What's when you were an employee, what's the largest amount you ever raised? Can you share that? Do you remember?
Well, I would say in total, as an employee, I probably raised maybe 10 to 15 million.
Wow. Wow. How'd that feel? The very first time you raised $10 million. I mean, I'm guessing you went to happy hour.
In total. Yeah. So it came in bouts of, $1 million here, $1 million there.
But still, okay. So you're learning how to network, relationships, raise cash, business development, all of that stuff. Exactly. Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. Cool.
And that was basically my toolkit for being an entrepreneur.
All right. Because you thought, well, hell, if I can raise money for these guys, I can raise money for myself and start my own thing.
Oh, wow. You just nailed my business model. I mean, so it was that combined with, I had some fundamental disagreements in the direction that the businesses I was working for were headed. There was, I myself had a passion for true commercialization. But yet I found myself in businesses that really were kind of perpetual R&D. Okay. Which I'm okay with R&D as long as it's a means to an end. But I didn't want to just spend my whole career just doing R&D that didn't go anywhere. And so at some point I realized I was either smart enough or stupid enough that, I had the right skills, and to heck with this, I'm just going to do it on my own.
And so in late 2011 or early 2012, you quit your job?
Summer of 2011, I quit.
Now, when you quit, did you have a quote plan? Had you already raised some cash on the side secretly or no? I'm just curious about, and the reason I want to ask about that moment is on the Riderflex podcast, a huge piece of our listeners, they're always curious about, okay, well, how did you survive during that time when you quit? And, right in there.
Yeah. Basically, I had a short-term consulting gig. So I had something that could pay the bills for 6 to 9 months.
Okay.
And I basically said, okay, that's enough time. I can, on my own time, I think, and again, I don't want to claim I did it by myself. I had some others that were involved with me that had shared the vision. And so between us, we basically said, okay, we've got enough of this kind of runway, so to speak. And between us, I think we can get something off the ground.
Now, are these guys you recruited from the company you left? Were you like, hey, come on, let's go do this?
Kind of yes and no. To be honest, we'd actually all left the companies and then sort of reconverged, if you will, in that 2011 timeframe.
Are these friends of yours that you knew back in college, or how did you know these guys?
No, these were guys that I worked with at some of those earlier businesses and just developed a good, strong relationship with.
So when you quit in late or early 2012, I think, I'm trying to remember, when you quit your job there and you had that consulting gig, were you married? Did you have any kids? Did you have, what was your risk tolerance at that time?
Yeah, well, I mean, so first of all, yes, married, 2 kids, and the risk. So my wife had a career.
Okay, good.
So for example, still had benefits.
All right.
So in this day and age, your benefits are tied to your employer. So when you go out on your own, that's something you have to factor in. So having a spouse with a job helped because I didn't have to worry about healthcare.
Well, what'd she say when you came home and said, "Hey, I'm going to quit my job"? How'd that go?
No, she was supportive.
Oh, was she?
Oh yeah, absolutely. After listening to me complaining over multiple years about why am I working for these people? Kind of thing. And she was like, "Fine, go do it yourself."
Go do it. Okay. Well, that's great. Okay, but you had 2. But hey, that's pretty risky.
Yep.
Two small kids at home. Okay.
Yep.
All right. I'm just curious. So you had the consulting gig. All right, go ahead. Roll us into it from there.
Yeah. So had this consulting gig. It actually, when I entered into the entrepreneurial world, I didn't realize it was a short-term consulting gig. It turned out to be a short-term consulting gig.
Okay.
I will say this: it definitely getting businesses up and running at that early day was tough. It was super duper tough. So I'm going back and marketing and doing business development, sometimes with the same people that I developed relationships over the years.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, we just continued to strike out. And so really hit bottom, I would say, in towards the end of 2012, where we'd probably thrown a dozen things at the wall and none of them stuck. None of couldn't secure funding for anything. And we had some other folks that were involved and basically punched out because they'd hit their risk limit. And so it was very lean and bleak times there in late 2012. And then it really, I think when things started to emerge that there was a kind of a glimmer of hope long term, because again, I was juggling a number of different things. Ultimately, they all converged on 2 businesses that exist today, Rocore and Solid Power.
Okay.
But it was really Solid Power really started to kind of get some momentum behind it. In kind of late 2012 and early 2013. And
momentum with cash raise or momentum with revenue or both?
When you're startup, there's no difference between cash and revenue. It's all just kind of the same. I mean, are you keeping the lights on? Are you paying bills?
I've never heard anybody say it like that, but I like that. That's good.
Yeah. But yeah, so Solid Power started to pick up some momentum, and that really propelled it to its formal kind of spin out of the university in January of 2014. Rocore was a little tougher. Really took really a lot of time. I mean, it wasn't until I'd say well into 2015 that you could sort of have a bit more confidence, shall we say, that this business is going to be sustainable.
And you were doing both of them at the same time. So you're raising money, you're raising money, trying to get operations up, hiring people, and you're the CEO for both companies at the same time?
Yep. Same time. And
Uh,
both companies were co-located. They lived together until mid 2016. And so
oh, I,
yep.
s-
So
I, s-
we were able to share back office staff. We had the same accounting
I see.
staff,
I see.
same kind of HR, that sort of thing.
I see. Okay. So you're running two businesses, raising cash. Oh, by the way, two kids at home and married, and
Yeah, 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 yeah,
trying to have a side life too.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. But they both start to take off.
Yep,
Eventually they both start to take off. Okay.
yep.
Wow. Now for the listeners, that sounded maybe a little too easy. So I just want to take a deep breath there. Congratulations. Right. What I did hear you say very quickly and casually is, hey, there were lots of no's in there. There were some scary times in there,
Yep.
some super tight times, some times where guys are calling me saying, hey, I want my money back. Probably. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I want out.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
So by the way, that's the other thing for the listeners in this deal. While you're running these companies, you're also managing the investors, which if you take on enough cash from enough people, that's a full-time job, right? A little
Right,
bit.
right,
I'm
right.
just guessing.
Yeah, and at that point, we never had investment, at least in those days. It was really kind of stakeholders, partners, and then just other people that were sort of had some skin in the game, some sweat equity.
I see.
And so so it was really the other skin in the game folks that really started to kind of punch out.
Which
Because
means which
again,
means which means you were good early on at saying, "Hey, Bobby, come on,
yeah,
let's do this. Let's do this together. I can't pay
yep.
you anything. I can't pay you anything, but you're going to get some equity over time. Come on, this will be fun. Let's do
Yeah, exactly. And then eventually people's patience ran out.
it." Or their spouses are like, "Hey, yeah, I know you're having fun, but we need money, so come on."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, all right. So let's fast forward just a little bit now. So both companies give us the overview today for each company,
Yep.
if you don't mind, as they stand. Go ahead.
Yeah. Interestingly, they're both roughly about the same size, roughly about 60 people. So first of all, I continued to run both companies up until the end of 2018. And it was at that point I just said that's it. I can't keep doing it. It's not fair to me. And it's not fair to the companies.
Mm-hmm.
The companies themselves need dedicated leadership. And it was really around that time that we'd started to sever all the remaining connections. And so as of today, I remain the only link between the two company, and I'm CEO of Solid Power, and I'm the board chairman of Rocore, and that's it. All other back office functions have been severed, physically located in two entirely different locations. But both roughly about 60 person, although Rocore is looking to add a fairly significant amount of folks this year. And both have been wildly successful. Solid Power's front, we closed our first equity investment round in 2018, pretty large one, 26 million. And today
Congratulations.
we're gearing up for Series B, and that's going to be a bit bigger.
Awesome.
And Rocore, Rocore has been, really successful in their business model. They have, they used a lot of those R&D funds that I talked about, but they used them for the purpose that they were intended for, which was really to kind of get you up and running, get some products. But the company itself needs to focus on actually generating true sales revenues. And that is, in fact, indeed what's happening today with Rocore. I mean, that's really what's driving its growth. Company's going to see about 100% growth
Wow.
in 2020 over 2019.
Wow.
And that's
Okay.
driven just by the number of commercial programs that are coming through the door. And again, just so the listeners are aware, these are wildly different companies. Solid Power is doing advanced battery systems for future electric mobility, and Rocore does components for small satellites. So think constellations of satellites for doing things like space-based communication, internet, etc.
Why these two businesses? Why, what led you down that path? I mean, did you just, okay, I want to start a battery company. I mean, just talk to me. How'd you get to that point? Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so Rocore was a team first kind of company. So in other words, it was, gather people that I'd worked with and just really, we complemented one another. But also it's in my technical wheelhouse. So again, I am trained as a aerospace structural engineer. So that's a lot of what I had done throughout my career was, different components, solar arrays, antennas, booms, et cetera, for satellite systems. So it sort of makes sense. And a lot of the people a lot of the relationships I developed over my career were kind of in that space. So that one on paper makes absolute sense. Solid power certainly doesn't. I'm not a chemist, as I like to say. I hated chemistry in college. Okay. And I'm basically running a chemistry company. Solid power was formed as idea first. So basically I was approached by a couple of professors at the University of Colorado. The last business I had left, I had actually managed a lithium ion battery group. So I'd spent 2 years kind of really getting an understanding of lithium ion batteries. And these guys approached me just through some professional society networking and said, hey, we want to form a business. And that's how I got involved. And again, it was idea technology first. Rocore was more team first.
I see. Okay. I was just curious. Is your top skill set the ability to talk people into following you down the mountain? Would you say that? Because it sounds that way. It sounds to me like you're that guy that you're on this bus in the mountains and it crashes and there's like 40 people on this bus and you're like, hey guys, we're going this way. Come on, let's go. Is that Doug?
To a degree. I think, the vision that I had with Rocore, it would be unfair to say it was mine alone. Yeah. Certainly, but it was shared by some of my co-founders, but certainly I was the main cheerleader, so to speak. And I think as we got through those lean times, I think, part of our success was just never wavering from that vision and reminding people, this is why we started, stick with the plan. It's a good plan. And similarly at Solid Power, the vision's a little different in this sense that you're saying, hey, this market's coming, electric mobility. Yep. Batteries are at the center of that, and frankly speaking, advanced batteries are really a huge future opportunity. And just sort of sticking with that vision. And I guess, myself as the constant preacher of said vision has kind of been my, number one job function.
You strike me as the type of guy that can like walk into a bar and there's like 20, I don't know, super tough looking bikers over in the corner. And I'm with you and I'm going, hey Doug, can you go over and make sure they like us? And you just go over and all of a sudden we're hanging out with them.
I could certainly chat with them.
You could probably hold your own, I'm guessing, with any type of personality. And that is a skill set. I know for guys like you, it kind of seems natural probably, but really it is a special skill set that not everybody has.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, anytime you're dealing with fundraising and business development, you're interacting with quirky personalities, and unfortunately, they have the money, and so you need to remember that.
What's the scariest moment for you? Did you ever have one of those, wake up at 3:00 in the morning in a cold sweat and go in the bathroom and puke and stuff like that? Any of those for you early on?
Well, I don't know about literally going to the bathroom and puke, but it's constant. If you're CEO, you're constantly thinking about what could go wrong. I'll be perfectly honest, we're having one right now. This whole COVID-19. It's April 2nd, and you pull up your news feed and it's scary. And so you look at what's happening. The good news is that, for example, Rocore is considered a critical business because of its defense and military contracts. And so it's able to maintain a degree of operations. Solid power side, as we start to look to a complete shutdown, at that point, you're just burning cash. Yep. And not moving the ball forward. That's scary. Yep. You can do that for a little while, but you can't do that forever. I don't know how this plays out.
I was having a conversation with the CEO yesterday, and we just agreed, running a business as a CEO on a regular day is super ass hard. Yeah. Throw in the coronavirus and everything we're going through now on top of that. Yeah. And to your point, I do think a lot of listeners, a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs think in their head, well, yeah, it's going to be super hard at first, but once I get it going, it's going to be, cruise control. Actually, it's not like that.
No, no.
You're right. It's always, there's always something to worry about and be stressed about as a CEO, even after the business is up and running.
Yeah, it never gets easy.
It never does. It really never does. What advice would you give aspiring entrepreneurs, somebody like yourself? They're in that job, they're kind of hating it a little bit. They're driving to work. Well, they're not driving to work now today, but in a normal world, they're driving to work and they're like, God, I hate this. And Bob's driving me nuts, or whoever their boss is. And they want to start something. They got an idea, but they're scared and they haven't done it yet. What would you tell them?
Yeah. Well, so despite everything we've talked about, get the scariness of the current situation and the challenges that I went through and getting things off the ground, I wouldn't change a thing. Absolutely not. Would not change a thing. And so first, my advice would be, take a chance on yourself, really, because that's really what being an entrepreneur is all about, is betting on yourself, and not, removing all roadblocks such that if you succeed, it's because you succeeded. And if you failed, you've only got yourself to blame. I tend to be a bit of a risk taker. So certainly I would evaluate the person I was giving advice to, just to try to assess, do they have a similar level of tolerance for risk? But if I concluded they did, it's go for it. You got to take a bet on yourself. You don't want to be, 80 years old looking back thinking coulda, woulda, shoulda.
You're right. Yeah. I would encourage aspiring entrepreneurs that are holding back, just, do yourself a favor when the coronavirus thing clears up. Go to a senior citizen's home and walk down the hallway and visit with a couple of 80-year-old guys or 80-year-old women and say, hey, what do you regret in life? And they'll quickly tell you, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have tried that. I should have, something like that will usually be their answer most of the time. You're right. You don't want to look back after it's too late.
Exactly.
Go for it now. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work. You go back and get another job again. I mean,
failure's okay. And in fact, to me, that's kind of part of the American spirit. Yeah. It is okay to fail. In many cases, you've heard the term fail fast. And what that means is you want to confirm yes or no very quickly, as possible, if your idea has merit. And you don't want to, if it doesn't, you want to keep beating your head against a wall. But it's also recognizing that failure is okay. And again, that's something that I think is unique about American societies. You go over to Asia and failure is not okay, but here it is. And failure, in my mind, leads to success. Pick yourself back up, try it again, try a different idea, try a different approach.
Are you one of those coaches that would say, hey, you got to be all in? You got to go all in. You can't do it part-time. What's your thoughts?
Well, you do have to go all in. And I have given that advice. I have talked to, I'll call them quasi-entrepreneurs, which is, well, I've got an idea, kind of want to do this. And my first question is, okay, that sounds great. When are you quitting your job? Well, I don't know if I want it. I'm like, yeah, you're not going to succeed. You're either all in or you're not. You need to make that choice for yourself.
Yeah, it's really hard to get it off the ground. I mean, you just work enough to save up a little side cash. Like you said, you had 6 to 9 months. I think you said early on, you were like, listen, I got about a 9-month window. I'm going to try like hell to get this going. We'll see what happens.
Right.
I think that's key. Okay. Let me ask you this, just switching gears here. We're getting towards the back end. You've hired now lots of teams. You've recruited people early on to join you. And now you have, I think you said 60 plus employees at both companies, executives, all kinds of stuff. You've done lots of interviews, lots of hiring.
Right.
The Riderflex podcast, we do give lots of advice to job candidates on this podcast. So can I ask you, what are some common mistakes you see from job candidates today as you interview people? What are some really just common things you see where you're just like, oh, Jesus Christ, what?
So I'm gonna answer your question more in terms of philosophical terms. Okay. Right. What I mean by that is a good salesman. And in some respects, we're all salesmen to a degree, right?
That's true.
You're always trying to convince something of the merits of some idea that you have. A good salesman, above all else, puts theirself in the shoes of the audience. Why? So I'm the audience member. Why should I listen to you? Why should I care? And that's precisely the advice I would give to anyone selling themselves. In the case of interview candidates, you're selling yourself, right? So first and foremost, put yourself in the shoes of the person on the opposite side of the table, and try to put yourself in their mind, what they're thinking and what they need. Not what you want to tell them, but what you think they need to hear. To me, that's the mark of a good salesman. And that slices kind of through everything, whether you're literally a salesman dialing for dollars, or doing early stage business development, or recruiting, or, interviewing for a job, which is ask first and foremost, why should I listen to you? Why should I care? Why should I consider you a member of this team? What problem of mine are you solving? And if you can confidently answer that, you're going to nail it.
I like that. That's good advice. Do you have a favorite question you'd love to ask during the interview at all? One or two?
I don't. I'm a freeformer. So,
Okay.
I hate those. I hate those,
Me too.
Tell me your greatest mistake and where do you see yourself in 5. I just despise those kinds
I
of
do
questions.
too. Oh my God. I feel the same way.
But I will say that I do ask questions through that lens of, can this person think outside of themselves? Can they, can they think from the perspective of a team, and, how I contribute, and so on and so forth, as opposed to, do they come in and just, try to blow sunshine at me and tell me how great they are. From my perspective, that's the worst thing you can ever do. Is, don't tell me how great you are.
How do you make
sure
sure
you can do for me?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Tell me what you can do for me. How do you make sure they fit the Rocore, solid power culture?
Well, it's funny. Well, first of all, those are two wildly different cultures.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So
Interesting.
It's
All
tricky.
right.
A person that could do well at Rocore might not necessarily do well at Solid Power, and vice versa, because they're two wildly different cultures. The good news is, by and large, Solid Power is going to be looking for different skill sets than Rocore is, because they're two also wildly different companies, different technologies. But the way I look at it is, I obviously you need a skill set, right? I'm hiring you to do something, so I need to assess, can you meet that skill set?
Right.
But I would say from a cultural fit, it really is looking at, do you have a sense of humility? I kind of touched on that, but I'll say it just very upfront. I'm not a big fan of arrogant people. I think humble people that can have a good degree of confidence in themselves, but aren't over the top. But people that have the ability to look in the mirror and identify what I'm good at versus what I'm not good at. The ability to learn, that's critical. Hey, we all screw up, but can you learn from it? And that, to me, that's an element of being humble, because if you can't learn, I don't want you on my team. That's just
interesting. You touched on that subject. I interviewed a Navy SEAL yesterday, and humbly confident is what he used. And I thought, that's good. I like that. Humbly confident.
I like that a lot.
That's really good. Okay. One more question. I know I've already kept you on the phone here for almost 40 minutes or longer. By the way, for the listeners, just real quick, rocore.com, ROCCOR.com, and then solidpowerbattery.com. Plus, you can learn more about Doug Campbell as well. I think you have your own website as well, don't you?
I do indeed. Entrepreneurialdysfunction.com.
Entrepreneurialdysfunction.com. Okay, if you want to learn more about Doug. Congratulations, by the way. I mean, on building two companies at the same time that are up and running. Great job, man. I mean, really, congrats. I mean, it's a huge accomplishment. So, congrats to you. Congrats to you and the team. Yep. All I know is if I'm ever in a foreign country and I need to talk some guys into doing something, I want you with me. One more final question. If you had to put your core purpose in life into a sentence, but I want you to push it away from your wife and children, kind of just let's let the family stuff be separate. Your core purpose professionally, how would you describe that?
Oh, that's a tough one. My core purpose professionally. Well, I guess I'll answer it from the perspective of maybe what I'm most proud of. And, I think obviously the businesses are continuing to grow and hopefully we'll move on to bigger and better things. But, as I reflect, that, what I'm most proud about are really the sort of professional lives that I've impacted. We at both companies we employ incredibly talented folks, and just to me, if you just think about it from the standpoint of wow, creating those kind of high power, I don't want to say high power, but just really impactful jobs, and what those turn into career, because no doubt many of these folks are quite young, so they'll have careers that go well beyond road core and solid power. And to me, that's, I guess, what I'm most proud about. And so if you say, boiling it back down to your question about purpose, I guess you could say just, this enabling others, if you will.
Enabling others. Yep.
Yeah.
That's great that you mentioned that. And I've had a few entrepreneurs that I've had that conversation with. It's great to build a business, make money, all these things.
Right.
But really, really, the true satisfaction is knowing that you made a difference in people's lives. Like you brought a guy in.
The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews.
Yeah, exactly.
Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.
And you made a difference in their lives. I said that alone is a major accomplishment. So
yeah, I mean, it's a legacy.
It's a legacy. It's a legacy.
Yeah.
Doug, congratulations. I really appreciate you being on the Riderflex podcast. Thank you for sharing. Great advice. Yeah, you bet. I'm going to hit stop on the recording, but hang on just a second before you hang up. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.